So, good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you. It's an interesting panel, the three of us, all from different walks of life, but all with a commonality about what we do. In our space, kind of speaking to the comments that were made by Vinette and then Malcolm, we find ourselves in a world short of electricity, one of the most fundamental products that you and I use in our everyday life, in everything that we do. It was said this morning that years ago there was a pretty good formula that the United States would come up with an answer and the rest of the world would follow that. I was in a meeting in Munich, Germany 2 weeks ago where someone who leads the World Business Council stood in front of us and said, the world is leaderless right now, and I think that that's absolutely true. When you think about our country and you think about energy consumption in our country and take it to the worldwide stage and think through the various challenges that we all face in satisfying an ever-growing need for a continuation of the advancement of the human experience, which is predicated on basic energy and energy availability. Post-Fukushima, most of the countries of the world are very nervous about going forward with the development of nuclear energy. When you think about most countries, we are all eagerly pursuing alternate energies, renewable sources. You saw in the video introducing our subsection of the young lady who won the MAD contest, and she was talking about kids and adults and plants so that we could have a greener world. So my company, other companies across the United States and throughout the world are working on alternate energies. We've gone back to where we started as we progressed from human power to animal power to wind and solar power, to steam power, to fossil fuel powers and nuclear powers. We've actually gone back in the renewable energy business of every one of us pursuing wind and sun. Great ideas, except the wind doesn't always blow when you want it, and the sun surely doesn't shine across the world evenly, nor as frequently as you want it, particularly to turn it into a product that you and I consume to run whatever part of our business or our life that we do on a daily basis. So we see those challenges usually in countries like ours stymied by the political inability to come to an answer. Most countries of the world have found a way, those particularly that are resource rich, have found a way to develop a plan to bring those resources to the rest of the consuming world. So think of a free China today consuming resources from all over the world. Think of Russia today exporting natural gas and oil, the two commodities that they really have for export. When you see India and the development of the natural resource base that they have. All countries find this mostly as an ace in the hole, save ours. In America, we believe that developing energy resources is one of those things that we just shouldn't do unless it has this moniker of being an acceptable renewable energy policy. And interestingly enough, we have a dichotomy of conversation from our colleagues in Washington that say we love wind and sun. Think about America and think about the wind corridor from the Dakotas down through the great Southwest. Think about America and the solar fields of the great southwestern deserts, and think of where we all don't live. So the challenge for us in our industry is to find a way to bring those renewable resources to the marketplace. To do that, we have to have innovation in the building of transmission, high voltage energy moving machines that are really an interstate highway for the electrical grid. Oddly enough, Washington does everything that they can possibly do to see to it that that doesn't happen. Now in my business, and in those of you who are, work in our business, those huge power structures, those tall lattice steel structures and the conductoring on them are things of beauty. To most Americans, they are things that interfere with their vistas. So bringing that renewable energy to you has become a very difficult challenge. Yet, you and I, each and every day, use more and more and more electricity in everything that we do. If you want to improve the national health statistics of any nation, all you have to do is improve the amount of energy available by 0.5% to get a multiple of that as far as the improvement of the overall health and well-being of any nation in the world. It's been demonstrated across the globe. Almost 2 billion of we 7 billion today have no access day-to-day to energy. In the United States, from about the 1940s, just after the war, through the 1980s, every time the GDP grew by 1%, the amount of electricity consumed in America grew by 1%. Late in the 1970s, with the 73 and 79 oil embargo, you and I, in this country at least, for the first time ever in our lives, started looking at the issue of what can we do to reduce the energy consumption. And it wasn't driven by some ulterior motive. It was driven by the fact that basic energy commodity had multiple increases in price over a very short period of time. If you're as old as I am, you can remember buying gasoline for 25 cents a gallon. I imagine many in this audience don't know that, but if you, no matter who you are in this audience, you can remember buying gasoline in this country for a couple of dollars a gallon. Today, at almost $100 a barrel, we're going to be back to experiencing the $3 and $4 gas. So what we've done from the 80s through the 10s, we have now gone to 0.5% growth in energy consumption, electric consumption, for every percent growth in the GDP. So even when you see countries like ours struggling along with a GDP of maybe 2% to 3%, the base demand and the peak demands for electricity continue to grow by that 0.5% relationship. So 3% growth in the U.S. economy, which we would all admit is abysmal, will lead to a 1.5% growth in our business. And how do we satisfy that? We're all big on renewables. We all believe they fit into the picture. They are electrically inefficient, but we'll work on that and we'll solve that. They are economically inefficient, but we'll continue to work on that and ultimately solve that. They are politically expedient, and that's why almost all of them do that. Today, what we have found is for every wind farm of any size that you want to have answer your problems, you need to have a series of natural gas-fired power plants very nearby to take care of the intermittency. My advocacy has always been, why don't we just skip the wind farm and build the gas field, because that really is part of the answer. As I said before, when you think of Fukushima, you're seeing countries across the world now, Germany, saying we're going to shut down all of our facilities and move away from nuclear power. Italy, although Berlusconi is now gone, had a pronouncement just a few weeks ago that they too would back away from nuclear power. In our country, 4 stations being built around the world, 53 stations being built. Our 4 may get to finish line. They may not get to the finish line. It's still unknowable. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission has yet to issue the permits that will allow them to go forward. So that brings us to what are we going to do about this base load demand, and it really takes us back to the things that Malcolm talked about. We are a huge coal-burning utility. In fact, we're the largest coal-burning utility in the Western Hemisphere. And we believe in clean coal. Not everyone does, but we do. That technology moves forward apace. But coal is a very difficult resource. It's a difficult resource to mine. It's a difficult resource to transport. It's a difficult resource to deal with as you convert it from that form of energy to electrical energy for consumption. And then it's a difficult resource to deal with after the fact. Today, my typical power plant looks like a power block with a chemical plant on the back of it. Tomorrow, a coal plant will look like a fuel processing chemical plant, then a power block, if you use that fossil fuel source. So where do we go? Some years ago, toward the early 80s and through the 90s, an innovator, an insider who became an outsider, George Mitchell of Mitchell Energy in Houston, Texas, decided that beneath the layer of resources that we have already looked at, we now know there is a layer of shale that's almost worldwide. Although shale is a very tightly compacted and very difficult to develop resource, but it's rich, we know, in hydrocarbons. And for years and years, George worked on that technology while his colleagues at Exxon and Chevron and then Standard Oil of Ohio and other companies said, this fellow's crazy. If that doesn't sound a bit like Malcolm's talk this morning, he continued to labor on it. And he sold his company toward the end of this century to Devon Energy out in Oklahoma. And they have developed an old technology of going downhole vertical and then going with what we then called in our industry directional drilling. The directional drilling was typically heading toward a target, and like anything, you would hope you would get there. Today, that technology is so advanced because of the work that Mitchell did that you can be in a shale formation no more than 12 inches and drill into it without ever leaving that resource base for 300, 400, 500 feet. And then you employ a technology that we've known for a long, long time called fracking. So when we look at our needs and we look at the world needs and we look at the energy needs as they grow in this country and around the world, shale gas and shale oil are part of the answer. In 1977, one of our smartest presidents, not surely one of our best presidents, said that the United States would run out of natural gas in the year 2000. At the time, we had a resource base of about 200 trillion feet a year of conventional natural gas. Now, Jimmy Carter was only off by 2,000 trillion feet, and off, I would argue, by at least a century. Today, with the development of shale gas in this country alone, we are looking at 2,200 trillion cubic feet with an annual consumption of about 22 to 25 trillion feet, depending on how the U.S. economy goes. So when we think of innovation in a very, very old industry, there is always room for that innovation. And not unlike the stories that Malcolm told about the massive breakthroughs in child research for cancer, this is a massive breakthrough that is an absolute game changer, not only here in this country, where we now have filed applications to actually export natural gas to Japan. And as you know, because of the stance that this current administration and the political bodies in Washington can't come to a resolution, a very vast field of heavy oil in Canada will now not be brought to the United States on a Keystone pipeline. If you've seen today's papers, you can see that the Prime Minister of Canada is now looking to export that to China. So the resource base is substantial, it is developable, it is incredibly cost effective, and shale gas will be a game changer for our industry and for your industry, no matter how you use our product. Thank you very much.